And at this time, let's go ahead and begin today's webinar, Understanding PPP Loan Forgiveness. I would like to introduce our first speaker for today, and that is Mike Keegan, Area Executive and Middle Market Segment Head with M&T Bank. Mike, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Aaron, thanks so much, and good morning, everyone. I know that we have almost 5,000 folks on the line today, and on behalf of M&T, Aaron already told you who I am. We want to thank you for taking time this morning to learn more about what the next phase of the Paycheck Protection Program is all about. At M&T, we've been steadfast in our commitment to working with you through the PPP process, and we know it has not been easy. And we're pleased to be able to help you on the next part of this journey. Now, the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA, did recently release additional guidance on loan forgiveness, and we will use our time this morning to review that guidance and help you to better understand specific points like, how do I know which expenses are eligible for forgiveness? What documentation do I need? When can I apply for loan forgiveness? And to help us along this journey today, I'm going to introduce shortly Eric Feldstein, who is a colleague of mine and head of business banking, and Christina Smazniak, who is head of a colleague as well, and head of SBA lending, and a real expert in this field, and someone who's helped guide us and many of you through this very challenging process. Although we're not going to be taking Q&A today, you are logging in lots of questions, and we will do our best to get to as many of those as we possibly can today. And we will make a commitment to you to try to answer those questions on an ongoing basis, and we'll be sharing information weekly around loan forgiveness. I don't think I'm saying anything that is new to any of you that the world has changed, and our lives have been upended personally and professionally. The impact of the coronavirus on our society and our economy is unprecedented, and in my tenure in banking of over 35 years, I've never experienced a more emotional and challenging time, certainly. So each one of you on the call today, we know have been impacted. You're our clients, you're our friends, you're community leaders, and we want to do our best to help you get through this really challenging, uncertain time. So we're committed to walking you through side by side to ensure you receive the guidance and support you need to weather this challenging road ahead. We thank you for trusting us through this entire process, and we are pleased to continue to serve you, and we encourage you to stay connected to your bankers at M&T. Reach out to them, and if they're not reaching out to you, certainly reach out to them and make sure that they're doing everything they can to help you through not just this process of the PPP program, but how you get your business back on track and working as you want it to work. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the resident expert who's helped guide us and many of you through this process, Christina Smazniak. Christina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you what we know about loan forgiveness and the aspect of it within the Paycheck Protection Program. On Friday, May 22nd, the SBA and the Department of Treasury jointly released guidance for borrowers and for lenders, which outlined our responsibilities as well as the requirements for loan forgiveness. M&T will have a few ways for you to access the loan forgiveness application online. One of our online banking portals, such as Online Banking for Business, WebInfo Plus, or the Treasury Center, as well as the Apply Now link on www.mtb.com/business-informed. As a best practice, the primary applicant should be the same person that applied for the loan. We will be taking paper applications for those who cannot access online channels. To prepare yourself for the application process, if you use a payroll provider, you'll want to check with them for reporting to demonstrate your payroll expenses. Prepare by completing the PPP Schedule A worksheets on the loan forgiveness application. It's SBA Form 3508, and you're able to download it from the resources option, which is the green resource list at the bottom center portion of your screen. Our online application will pre-populate your PPP loan number as well as the lender PPP loan number for you. For customers who have to submit paper applications, you can obtain these numbers by pulling the SBA loan number from the first page of your note. It is recommended that you apply as soon as your 8-week coverage period concludes or when the online application opens if you have all the required information and documentation ready. Banks have up to 60 days to conduct their review. However, we do not expect it will take us that long. The SBA can conduct their own review of the submission from the lender, which can take up to 90 days before the loan forgiveness payment is remitted to the lender to be posted to your loan. We are targeting making our online application for loan forgiveness available in late June. Once it is available, you will be notified, so be on the lookout for communications from us. The SBA and Department of Treasury jointly released the loan forgiveness application on Friday, May 15th. There was additional guidance that was released jointly by the SBA and Department of Treasury late Friday, May 22nd, that helped us put some framework around the requirements of borrowers and lenders for loan forgiveness. The loan forgiveness application is complex. We highly recommend completing the PPP Schedule A and the Schedule A worksheet on pages 6 through 9 as pre-work prior to applying via our online portal. If you complete this work in advance, the online application process is expected to be less than 30 minutes. You will be required to retain documentation supporting your loan forgiveness application for a minimum of 6 years after the date the loan is forgiven or paid in full per the SBA guidance, and permit authorized representatives of the SBA, including the Office of Inspector General, to access such files upon request. The information on the worksheet includes additional detail on employees, such as names, the last 4 Social Security number, and breakouts of over and under $100,000 of income. The additional guidance that was released on Friday also provided some additional clarity on the cover period and alternative payroll cover period as 8 weeks or 56 days. It better explained eligible payroll and non-payroll costs, which is also outlining the difference between incurred versus paid, reductions to loan forgiveness amounts and waivers for safe harbors, owner employees and self-employed individual payroll compensation capped at lesser of $852 of 2019 compensation levels or $15,385 per individual in a total across businesses. Self-employed and partner caps on forgiveness amounts were better explained, as well as they provided a definition of full-time employee equivalent. They also supplied additional information regarding furloughed workers, voluntary resignation, as well as terminated for cause, and they highlighted the documentation requirements for what borrowers will need to submit to lenders for loan forgiveness. The covered period is 8 weeks or 56 days from the time the loan was dispersed, or the SBA and the Department of Treasury are providing an alternative payroll covered period as 8 weeks or 56 days from the date the first payroll cycle in the covered period. Incurred versus paid outlined payroll costs are considered paid on the date that paychecks are distributed or the borrower originates an ACH credit transaction. Payroll costs incurred during the borrower's last pay period of the covered period or the alternative payroll covered period if paid before the next regular payroll date. Otherwise, payroll costs must be paid during the covered period or the alternative payroll covered period to be eligible for loan forgiveness. Payroll costs are generally incurred on the day the employee's pay is earned or the day that the employee worked. For employees who are not performing work but they are still on the borrower's payroll, payroll costs are incurred based on the schedule established by the borrower, which is selected on the loan forgiveness application. The FDA and Department of Treasury also provided a definition of FTE. FTE is defined as the full-time equivalent of an employee who works 40 hours or more on average each week. The hours of employees who work less than 40 hours are calculated as proportions of single full-time equivalent employees and aggregated. The CARES Act did not define a full-time equivalent employee when it released its initial guidance. The newly released guidance has determined that a full-time equivalent is 40 hours or more in each work week. Some or all of PPP loans may be eligible for loan forgiveness if the borrower uses the proceeds to maintain payroll and eligible business expenses, subject to reductions in FTE employees or employee salary wages during the covered period. Minimally, 75% of the loan proceeds need to be used for paid or incurred payroll costs on payroll expenses, including health and retirement benefits and payment of state and local taxes. Please note, federal taxes should not be included. For partners and self-employed, health and retirement benefits cannot be included in payroll costs. 25% of the usage can be used on eligible business expenses such as business mortgage interest, business rent and lease expenses, as well as business utility payments. It is important to note that mortgage loans, rent and lease agreements, as well as utilities must have been in effect February 15, 2020 or prior to be eligible. Some important dates and considerations when preparing your application for loan forgiveness are that expenses should be over an 8-week or 56-day period beginning when the loan was disbursed or using the alternative payroll covered period based on the first payroll period following the loan disbursement. Under the FTE reduction exemption guidelines, you have until at least June 30th, 2020 to restore your full-time employment and salary levels. A borrower may exclude any reduction in full-time equivalent employee headcount that is attributable to an employee if you've made a good faith written offer for rehire, the offer was for the same salary and wages and same hours as the last pay period prior to the separation, and the offer was rejected by the employee. The guidance outlined that you are required to retain records of the offer and the rejection. However, you do not need to submit this information to the lender. It is important that you are aware that you are obligated to notify state unemployment insurance offices of an employee's rejection within 30 days. Prior to accessing the online application for loan forgiveness, you will want to be prepared with PDF copies of documentation to support eligible payroll and non-payroll expenses outlined in your PPP loan forgiveness application. Submission without appropriate supporting documentation may delay our turnaround time. Documentation showing the following is going to be required: the average number of FTE employees on the payroll, per month employed by the borrower between February 15th, 2019, and June 30th, 2019, or the average number of FTE employees on payroll per month employed by the borrower between January 1st, 2020 and February 29th, 2020. In the case of a seasonal employer, the average number of FTE employees on the payroll per month is going to be based on a time period between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019, or between January 1st, 2020 and February 29th, 2020. You can also elect to use any consecutive 12-week period between May 1st, 2019 and September 15th, 2019. The selected time period must be the same time period selected for the purpose of completing the PPP Schedule A referencing line 11. Documentation to support your FTE are payroll tax filings that have or will be reported, state quarterly business and individual employee wage reporting, as well as unemployment insurance tax filings that will be reported or have been reported. Payroll expenses are identified, payroll expenses include bank account statements or third-party payroll service provider reports documenting cash compensation paid to employees. Tax forms or equivalent third-party payroll service provider reports for payroll tax filings and state quarterly wage reporting and unemployment insurance tax filings. Payment receipts, canceled checks, or account statements documenting employee health insurance and retirement plan contributions. And again, if an employee was offered their job and refuses to come back, you have a firing for cause or an employee voluntarily resigns, the written request must be retained by the borrower within their own file. Non-payroll expenses documentation must verify the existence of obligations and services prior to February 15, 2020, and eligible payments for the covered period. The documentation supplied should consist of through 1 month after the end of the cover period to verify interest amounts and eligible payments. For business mortgage interest payments, an amortization schedule or canceled checks or bank statements from February 2020 covering the 8-week covered period should be submitted. For business rent and lease payments, a copy of your current lease and receipts or canceled checks or bank statements from February 2020 and the covered 8-week period will be required. For business utility payments, a copy of the invoices from February 2020 and the covered 8-week period, and receipts, canceled checks, or account statements should be submitted. If all or part of your loan is not forgiven, the unpaid balance must be repaid per the original terms of the note, 1% fixed interest rate and a 24-month term, which was comprised of a 6-month deferment followed by 18 months of P&I payments. As a reminder, there are no prepayment penalties on Paycheck Protection Program loans. At the end of the 6-month deferment period, you will receive a notice of the monthly amount due starting on month 7. If approved, your loan forgiveness in whole or in part will be applied to your loan, and your monthly payments will be recalculated as fixed P&I payments over the remaining term of the loan. This may occur before or after your first payment is due. If it occurs after, you will receive an updated notice regarding your monthly payment amount. Please continue to check our website at www.mtb.com/business-informed for updates on FAQs, tools and resources regarding loan forgiveness, and you may also refer to the U.S. Department of Treasury website on their Paycheck Protection Program for additional information. If you need assistance, please contact your relationship manager or branch manager, or you can call our telephone banking center at 1-800-724-6070. Please be on the lookout for emails from M&T regarding loan forgiveness, specifically insights on loan forgiveness, as well as when our online application portal opens. I would now like to turn it over to the head of business banking, Eric Feldstein.
Thank you very much, Christina, and good morning, everyone. Really appreciate everyone's time on the call this morning. Many of you have asked questions, and a huge thank you for your submissions. Christina and I have grouped many of these questions into top themes, and we're going to answer as many of these questions as possible in the coming minutes. We are gathering your questions that you're asking as we speak right now, and are going to answer as many questions as possible as we roll out FAQs in the coming days. So why don't we go right to some of the Q&A and some of the top themes that have come up. Let's see. So how long, Christina, can I expect the process to take?
So lenders have up to 60 days to decision the loan forgiveness application and submit it to the SBA for review. The SBA will have 90 days to review and remit the loan forgiveness to the lender to be applied to the borrower's loan.
Great, thank you. And why don't we just on the theme, what's the time frame in which the loan forgiveness application and documentation must be submitted to the lender?
That guidance that was released this past Friday did not include a specific deadline for when a borrower must submit their loan forgiveness application to the lender. Lenders and borrowers need clarity as to when the forgiveness application must be submitted in order to properly ensure that applications are submitted timely, especially before the deferment periods end. So we're still awaiting some additional clarity from the Department of Treasury as well as the SBA.
Great, thank you. Next question came in. A bunch of colleagues on the phone had asked, what is the maximum that could be paid to owners?
The pay cannot exceed $852 of the 2019 compensation for any owner, employee, or self-employed individual or general partner. This is capped at $15,835 per individual, and there's a cap of $100,000 annually per employee.
Great, thank you. A bunch of questions on non-mortgage debt. This one, is interest on non-mortgage debt a forgivable expense, such as term debt, lines of credit, or credit card debt?
No. The only interest payments that can be forgiven is on mortgage obligation and real or personal property under a lease agreement that was in force on or before February 15, 2020. Loans secured by movable personal property, such as a chattel mortgage, as opposed to a conventional mortgage. Personal property typically includes furniture, fixtures, tools, vehicles, and perhaps even machinery and equipment that could be under a lease agreement as well.
Great, thank you. Paid versus incurred is a question that came up quite often. Can you help me determine the difference between paid or incurred? Can I potentially get 10 weeks of payroll?
So payroll costs are considered paid on the day that paychecks are distributed or the borrower originates the ACH credit transaction. Payroll costs incurred during the borrower's last pay period of the covered period or the alternative payroll covered period are eligible for forgiveness if paid on or before the next regular payroll date. Otherwise, payroll costs must be paid during the covered period to be eligible for loan forgiveness.
Great, thank you. Another very common question that's come up today around payroll company reporting. Will a payroll company's report suffice to be the documentation required for the payroll?
So bank account statements or third-party payroll service provider reports documenting cash compensation that was paid to employees is one of the three categories of required payroll documentation. You will also need to submit tax forms and payment receipts or canceled checks or account statements regarding health insurance or retirement plans as part of your loan forgiveness application.
Great, thank you. And just for those on the line, I know we're at the 10 o'clock hour. I know how important this is to each of you. If it's okay, for those that need to drop off, a huge thank you. But we're going to answer a few more questions over the next 5 minutes and try to get through a few more, if that's okay. So, Christina, the next one, very common question, are bonuses hazard pay permitted?
So if an employee's total compensation does not exceed $100,000 on an annual basis, the employee's hazard pay and bonuses are eligible for loan forgiveness because they constitute a supplement to salary and wages and are considered compensation. But as a reminder, if you're self-employed or a partner, this cannot exceed 852 of the 2019 comparison.
Great, thank you. Several questions about safe harbor relative to the FTE. What is the FTE reduction safe harbor? Is it based on the FTE and the compensation?
Based on current guidance, if an employee's salary and wages were reduced between February 15, 2020 and April 26, 2020, the 8-week of the net profit of the owner's 2019 Form 1040 or $15,385, whichever is lesser, can be requested as part of the loan forgiveness amount. Because this guidance regarding the safe harbor is ever changing, we're going to suggest that you refer to the interim final rule on additional eligibility criteria as well as the safe harbor, as the Department of Treasury and SBA are constantly releasing new information regarding these timeframes.
Great, thank you. This around the EIDL or the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, is an EIDL eligible for loan forgiveness?
According to the guidance that was released this past Friday, no, the SBA is going to deduct the EIDL advance amount from the loan forgiveness amount.
Great, thank you. And just to retract, to come back to one of the questions, around employee salaries, what will a reduction in employee salary or wages have on the loan forgiveness amount?
So a reduction in the employee's salary or wages in excess of 25% will generally result in a reduction in the loan forgiveness amount. For each new employee in 2020 and each existing employee who has not been paid more than the annualized equivalent of $100,000 in any pay period of 2019, the borrower must reduce the total forgiveness amount by the total dollar amount of the salary or wage reductions that was in excess of 25% of the base salary or wages. And that's between January 1st, 2020 and March 31st, 2020. This is subject to exceptions for borrowers who restore reduced wages and salaries. This reduction calculation is performed on a per employee basis, and it is not aggregated.
Great. Thanks, Christina. Several questions about ineligibility. What if the SBA deems that I am ineligible for loan forgiveness and I want to appeal?
The SBA did state in the guidance that was released last Friday that there will be an appeals process. However, they stated that it will be released at a later date, and we're awaiting that additional guidance at this time.
Great. Thank you. And just, Christina, one that we can send out to colleagues later, this question, relative to where can I find the M&T PPP loan number. Several colleagues on the phone can only find their SBA loan number. Something that either now or we can send to folks on the line offline.
Yeah, so we will be pre-populating that information if you apply online. If you need to take advantage of the paper application process, your relationship manager or branch manager will be able to point you in the direction of where that information can be obtained.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you for answering the questions. And once again, a huge thank you to each of you for attending this morning's Understanding PPP Loan Forgiveness call. We know that this current environment each of you are facing today is filled with anxiety and stress, and we here at M&T Bank are truly here to help each of you. Just a few reminders, as Christina and Mike Keegan had highlighted at the beginning, we'll be sending an email out when it is time for you to begin filling out your loan application for loan forgiveness. Also, as we have been doing over the past several weeks, be on the lookout for weekly emails sharing insight on loan forgiveness, and don't forget to visit our website for updates to FAQs, tools, and resources to get you through the loan forgiveness process. This presentation, as well as highlighted earlier, is now available and can be accessed in the resource section of your user portal. And as discussed earlier, we're also going to have a recording sent out most likely on Friday for individuals that want to rehear this or were unavailable to listen to this conversation. Once again, a huge thank you for your time this morning. Wishing each of you bright days ahead, and thank you for your partnership and relationship with M&T Bank. Take care.